Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for coming back to Listening In, the National Counselling and Psychotherapy Society podcast. In this series, we want to give you the opportunity to listen in to some of the conversations that we are lucky enough to have every day, that is, with a variety of people and organisations all working in the field of mental health and well-being. In this episode, we are back in Northern Ireland again, as Eilish Craig, clinical lead of West Wellbeing, joins me for a chat. In our slightly rambling conversation, we cover a variety of themes. Eilish's career path from working in construction to cake making, and then finding her vocation in counselling. We talk about the unique challenges faced by people living in post-conflict Northern Ireland, but most of all, the conversation shines a light on a service that knows its community and holds it at the heart of all it does. And in response, we learn how much that community appreciates, values, and gives back to that service. From being a safe space for someone experiencing domestic abuse, to outreach work with the homeless, collaborating with food banks and addressing poverty, the trusting relationships being built by West Wellbeing with its community are special, and the positive impacts far-reaching. So just briefly then, perhaps, here you are fully fledged, working as a counsellor and supporting, and again, I know we're going to come on to this, like really embedded within your local community and supporting them. How did you come to do all this? Like what was your path to this place? If you look back where it all started.
So I think it all started, it kind of came by accident, really. So I was taking part in a local kind of, I suppose I would say like a get back to work thing after I had my daughter. And what I had done was whenever I had been pregnant, I taught myself to make cakes. So then I thought, right, because I'd worked in construction for a very long time before that. And it was just something I had her, and I thought, no, I don't want to go back into that. So I taught myself to bake, and then I was going to, it was like a, how to set up your own business type thing. The local enterprise agency was running this like course, so I signed up to the course, and I remember the lady asking me, what is it you really, really would like to do? She says, when I'm talking to you about cakes, you don't seem at all excited. And I kind of looked at her and I thought, well, it's just a job, really. But she said to me, like, what would you really, really like to do? And I said, well, I'd love to support families in the way that my family wasn't supported through. My stepfather had a really rare brain illness called MSA. And I just find that as we kind of navigated that, like, because he was always really healthy, he's over 6 foot, big, they used to call him the big gentleman, and he was a part of my life from I was very, very young. So he was that real father role for me. And then to see him kind of become ill, there was a whole build up to that. And we did not know how to navigate that at all. So there was always that kind of thing in the back of my head, gosh, I wish I could do something to support other families, because I know what it feels like to go through something really horrific. And then he passed away in 2010. So I was up doing this course in the July, and the girl said to me, have you ever thought about counselling? And I went, no. And see, by the end of the week, I had looked up the course and I had signed myself up to the certificate in counselling in NRC, and that just started the whole thing for me then.
Well, I never. So it had just not been on your radar at all, and then there was this sort of serendipity of meeting this person that's like, Have you ever thought of that?
Yeah. But like just how much those conversations, because it's like this wee course that was just, how to set up your business and blah, blah, blah. And just, it literally was one conversation. She noticed from me that I wasn't really feeling it. Do you know what I mean? And her bringing that to my attention, because I'd never thought about it. I didn't know much about the profession at that time at all. So for me, it was support families. And then for her to say that, and that was it. The path, almost like opened, and I literally haven't stopped since.
Gosh, I was going to say, so was that did you fall in love with it right from the word go, bearing in mind you had very little knowledge that you were, if any knowledge that you were bringing into it? So I suppose it was a blank slate completely for you.
Yeah.
Were you hooked from the word go?
From the word go, I just soaked up all of the theories. I loved being in like a group setting with other people. I think I'm quite a sociable person anyway. So I just soaked every single part of it in. I loved it.
And then it made sense to go from the certificate and on and on and on and work your way through.
Yeah, so it's kind of really funny how my journey kind of has kept going, because I mean, in the back of my mind, I always had it in my head, I'm going to work with families, and families that have had this real life-changing event, sickness, illness. And then as it kind of progressed on, and I was like, don't know if that's a wee bit too close to home. So I always had the awareness that maybe this wasn't the right way to go, but there would be other ways in which I could support people. And I always said I'll never work with children. I thought I can't work with children. That would be just too much. I would be taking all the children home with me. And then I always said I would never work in suicide, because gosh, that's too hard. That is so hard. And I went on to do both. I love working with children and young people, and I also like suicide prevention, intervention has been part of what I've done since, it's 12 years now.
That's amazing, isn't it? And it's really interesting hearing you say about perhaps that's supporting families, that the whole reason you'd come into it in the first place, you started to think to yourself, actually, maybe that's just a little bit close to my own stuff. Because I think it can go either way, can't it? I know myself and my supervisor have had conversations, over the years of how sometimes our own experiences obviously can really bring something extra into the work when we're working with somebody who are going through similar things. And I know clients, or the people we work with, well, sometimes even, can you relate to this? Has this been something in your life? And of course, there's matching services and things like that go on nowadays, isn't there? But actually, it can also flip the other side, can't it? And actually, we run risk of almost being too familiar with our own experiences, and that clouding perhaps work with somebody else in the same vein.
Absolutely. And I think what also came from that, I suppose, like I talk to everybody about awareness. Awareness for me is so instrumental in what we do, because what we're not aware of, we're not in control of. And I always remember one of my tutors actually in first year, his name was Connor, going to give him a big shout out. He was absolutely incredible, like incredible. And do you know what? Like Carl Rogers talks about, when the environment is right, people will grow. And in that first year, like I really grew into not only myself, but as a practitioner, and really just honed in on what it was, what that I could bring. And I think what I really realized at that time was, whilst this work is really important, but I'm not just the right person, because there's a lot of stuff for me that was at that time unhealed.
Yeah.
We had went through something really, really awful that really kind of, I suppose, our family structure just didn't cope with it at all. And, our family was quite broken down at that time. And so there was a lot of pain, a lot of hurt. So for me to kind of bring that, almost like that baggage with me, was just not the right thing to do. So I kind of looked at different avenues. And then when it came to me going to find my placement, I went for another local suicide prevention charity, and I stayed there for years. I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the work. And then I just got really comfortable with the uncomfortable. Like, I talk about that all the time. Suicide literally is the elephant in the room sometimes, and just became, and I kind of went through that movement as well. Of at the start, suicide was very scary for me, but then as I kind of learned more about it, it was more like no one ever should feel like this is their only option. And I think that took a bit of the fear out of it for me. We talk about seeing people and not problems. And we really do. I know for me as a practitioner, like, I really do look for the person, all of them, not just what they're bringing into the room at that time. And I know that as an organisation now we do that too, and it's lovely. And the feedback that we get from our clients, and the people that I've worked with along the way, has always been, you just really sat with me, and you really heard me, and that's so powerful. It really, really is.
It's incredibly powerful, isn't it? And I think it doesn't matter how long you've been doing the type of work you do, it remains so, doesn't it? And the ability I think people have to come and sit with somebody who is unknown to them, and to be able to disclose and to be able to just open up and be honest and frank about how they're feeling and what they're thinking. It still blows me away, how they do that. It's and it does. It comes down to relationship, and it comes down to need, doesn't it? They just need that so much at that time. It's something that they're lacking in their life, and there's you and Roisin and your colleagues there providing that for them. So moving forwards a little bit. I mean, I keep thinking as well. You saying about you used to work in construction. I had no idea that's the case. And just out of interest, do you feel did you bring anything from that?
I was somebody who got into, I was very young, like I was only 20 or 21, and I was kind of bouncing from job to job because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I ended up working in the accounts. I done basically like purchase ledger for a local construction company, and I was there for about 8 years. And again, it wasn't something that, I felt completely at one with. It just never really. But one thing that I did bring, I suppose, from it was the fact that we know now in, people that work in the construction industry, there's quite a high prevalence of suicidal ideation. So I suppose now working in West Wellbeing, we have had conversations with local construction companies to hear about how we could bring in, some of what we do into their workplace. Jared, who we were mentioning earlier, he's been going up to do some toolbox talks, which have been really, really good, and it's opening up the conversation, with men and mental health, and then just how isolating it can be sometimes working on a construction site or within the construction industry. But now I do know that there's, even in the Republic here, there has been some kind of movement now to kind of really like shine a light on it. But yes, it's slowly kind of, gathering pace at the minute. But, we're just hoping that we can bring that to a point where, men are able to come straight in to us, get the help and the support that they need. And also that we're training, the people in the managerial roles on what to look out for when they see people, that may potentially be struggling on their building sites.
Yeah. And that's such a brilliant segue into, so we haven't even mentioned yet, really, that you're speaking to me at the moment, quite literally from, but also in the role as in the care team, the clinical team of West Wellbeing, which is based in West Belfast. And I know I've always said to you when I've been trying to nobble you to have one of these conversations, is what always really strikes me about the work you and the team do is just how incredibly embedded it is into community, the outreach you do. And we can come on talking what that looks like. You've already obviously mentioned about reaching out to the construction industry, for example. But I don't want to take for granted that anybody listening to this is going to have an awareness perhaps of the specific challenges sometimes that are faced by your community and people around you. And I don't just mean Northern Ireland, but I mean West Belfast very specifically. So I know I'm asking you to describe something in a few minutes that's so big, and I want to just acknowledge that this is big stuff. But can you give people any insight into the specific challenges that are faced, and and in West Belfast particularly, just how prevalent mental health issues can be?
Yeah. So as you say, yeah, we are a community-based organisation, and living in West Belfast and working in West Belfast with it, brings a lot of an awareness around, this is literally an area of deprivation. A lot of people here in West Belfast have been so entrenched with trauma from the conflict that happened here. So we'll hear terms like, post-generational trauma or transgenerational trauma. And that really does exist here. It's embedded into every part of the community here. And with that then comes, there's a high prevalence of suicidal ideation, and a lot of deaths by suicide within the area. We are faced with many addiction issues as well. And one thing that happens here, or that doesn't happen, is that within our statutory services, it's not treated, as a dual diagnosis. Oh my God, that completely went out of my head there.
You found it.
Yeah, so what actually needs to happen with the people within this community, we need to look at and kind of see it through the lens of a dual diagnosis, because it's really unfair to expect people with addiction, because someone who has an addiction has also got some kind of mental health issue going on too. And what they're often faced with is, we can't work with you until you sort out your addiction, and vice versa. So I think what we do very well here is that we take that person in, and it usually is not through our counselling service at all. It's usually we take them in through befriending and through advocacy and outreach. Then we link in with other places and people, and we have, very successfully managed to support people in trying to look at their addiction and potentially why, and then link them in with lots of different supports so that they're getting that real kind of wraparound service. And there's no judgment. There's literally no judgment. We know what it's like for people to live here. And West Belfast, despite everything that goes on here and has gone on here, the people are just incredible. They've been through so much, and they really support us. They really value, the service that we're providing. They're very engaged, and it's just a lovely place to be. It's a lovely place to work.
I think that really comes across, and again, it's part of the reason why I thought this would be a lovely conversation for people to listen into, because community is everything. Do I please tell me if I've remembered this wrong, but do I remember even, setting up of the services and quite literally the building and rooms that you're in, the community helped that to happen? Am I right?
Local joiners, local painters, local electricians, all kind of really played their part and built this, because from what I know, it was just like one big open space. And now we have like a reception area, we have a training room, we have 3 counselling rooms, and then we have a wee cabin out the back, which is used for our art therapy. So yeah, everybody came and did something, played their part, and like West Wellbeing, like this is for the community, and it's very much kind of, you know, their go-to, and we just value everything that they've brought to us, you know, in the same way that they value, you know, the work that we're doing for the community too. So it's we're all very much on a level together. You know, there's no, I don't do hierarchies anyway, but you know, there's no kind of hierarchy type kind of thing here. It's just we are a bunch of human beings, you know, some supporting others, some just there for others, you know, and what we do know is that like people, we're hardwired for connection, you know, that's what we need, and we're not afraid to kind of, you know, even like we notice sometimes, you know, people are a bit hesitant to come in, and when we see that, like we'll go out after them, you know, and just kind of really warmly invite them in, and it's like every single time, you know, we get this lovely feedback that as soon as I stepped through the doors, like I just felt so welcomed, I felt so safe, you know, and I think that's something that's really special. You know, you couldn't pay for that.
I felt that when I've walked through your doors. I wasn't in a place of vulnerability or anything, but there's something about that space that you guys work within. And I don't know if it is something slightly other because of how it's been created and the goodness and the kindness and the generosity that's gone into it. But it does, it exudes that. You feel it from the moment you walk in the door. I can absolutely vouch for that without a doubt. And there's this, it feels like this real wonderful sort of reciprocal relationship you have with your community. They give, you give back, and it just seems to work in this lovely symbiotic way. I can only talk, and that's talking as somebody, you know, again, as a stranger that's just come in a couple of times to see you all, and you feel it, you really do feel it. And so is it okay just so how did that come about then, in terms of when the joiners and the painters and all these people coming together to help create that space, what existed at that time? So I suppose I'm asking you in a sense, where did West Wellbeing come from? Where did it come out from?
Yeah, so it was set up back in 2021. So there was two people involved in the setup, as well as a lot of other people as well. But, you know, they had been very much kind of linked with the local kind of sports community and, you know, football community. So that's originally, you know, the idea, and that's how it started, where they wanted to kind of put something in place for, you know, local football teams and local sports people. And again, you know, a lot of the really well-known sports people in the area really got behind that. But what happened then, as kind of West Wellbeing started to grow, was that more and more people from the community outside of like the football community started to say, look, we need help, you know, we need some kind of support. So then that's where, you know, they kind of went away from that kind of sports forum idea. And this was just something then, you know, for the people of West Belfast. We are a suicide prevention charity, you know, but we do support like just mental health in general. And that's kind of how it started to turn. And then we just got very busy very quickly. I think, you know, we have an absolutely amazing team of counsellors, therapists, art therapists, who are really just doing the work for the right reasons, you know. Even as we take students on, you know, one of the things that I always say to them, you know, there's a real process in place now where we invite them in, we want to have a conversation, you know, and I always tell them, you know, it's to make sure that we're the right fit for you, but also that you're the right fit for us too, you know, and we want to make sure that we have the right people here, and we just seem to attract the most loveliest therapists, students, and we have real open dialogue as to how, you know, we want the place to look. We put our clients at the most center point where, you know, everyone deserves to have a really good experience whenever they come through the doors, and thankfully that's the feedback that we're consistently getting, which is amazing. And some stories will touch, you know, the deepest compassion within you, and you just kind of go, you know what, people are amazing, you know, they're absolutely brilliant, you know, the things that people go through, and yet they're still showing up in a world that probably feels really unsafe sometimes, you know. I think that's just incredible.
I know part of our work is to help people find healthier ways of coping. But even so, I still think there's something, isn't it extraordinary, even if it is, you know, substance abuse or, you know, all of these hugely unhealthy or counterproductive ways of coping. But people have still found something that does help them cope. I know in the longer term, you know, it's not good, and they find themselves needing the help, and that, you know, as with alcohol in particular, you know, it's a symptom of another problem rather than being the problem in and of itself. But they have found their own way of trying to manage whatever difficult feelings they're struggling, and that's amazing. Even if it doesn't work, even if it isn't the healthiest way, even if it isn't the best way and ends up being really destructive, it's still something that they have been able to find for themselves. I don't know if that's making any sense. It might sound a little bit out there, but I think I'm just sort of saying that it is testament to human beings and actually resilience in its own slightly weird way sometimes that enables somebody to actually just still be here.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, you know, and this is where people kind of start to see, sometimes when they come in here, they think they're at complete rock bottom. And for them, you know, it feels that way. But whenever we start to kind of show them, you know, just how incredible they are, all of those resources, internal resources they have.
Absolutely.
You know, and one of the things I just wanted to share a wee example, and I'm allowed to share this. The client has given me permission to share this, but you know, going through active addiction. And it took a bit of time to get them here. But because they had been let down by so many people in the past, and, you know, and it was about having a very, very honest conversation to say, you know, look, we are sorry that that's happened in your past, but, you know, I can tell you that we are doing this for the right reasons, and, you know, we will try our best to support you in whatever we can do. And then to have that person come in through our doors and now view us as their safe place. You know, there was a day where they came in and they actually sat in our art therapy room and just sat there all day because they felt really, really safe. And we were just checking in, you know, every so often, and that was just, I think it was really incredible for them to kind of now have this space where they feel completely safe. They're making changes in their life because they know that we are kind of there holding where we can and when we can. We're all about empowerment, so we don't like to disempower people, but if they come in here and that's what they need to do is go and sit out in the art therapy room for an hour, that's what will happen. And now it's led to that person. They've been clean for a while now, and making, you know, changes within their life that are just incredible, you know. And it was really lovely to see them walking in one day just to give us a wee bit of an update, and it was like, wow, just look at you, you know. And that's, you know, the thing that they are doing. Like, it took for them to come in here, but, you know, all of those changes they're making themselves and they're doing the work. And it's just incredible to see. And that's just one wee tiny story out of probably, you know, 100 more, you know. I just really value our profession in general, and like we're very, very, very. I know I've said this to you multiple times, but we're very proud members of NCPS. And one of the things, I was actually going through some of your paperwork there recently, and it said like at the heart of the NCPS are our members. And like at the heart of West Wellbeing is our clients, and that's just really, really powerful. When people feel supported and feel that they can, tease out whatever it is that's going on, for us organisationally, for clients, whatever's going on in their life, when they feel like they have that base that they can always rely on, it makes really brilliant things happen, progress happens.
You said earlier, didn't you? You talked about Carl Rogers and talking about how important an environment is, how somebody needs to feel safe. And that's just such a lovely little picture that you painted of that person coming and sitting in your art therapy room. They didn't want anything. They clearly weren't necessarily speaking to anybody. They were just spending time. I've got the privilege of having been in your art therapy room myself, and just to let people listening know, it's a small space, it's a small, colourful, but the word I want to use is containing. It feels a very containing space, and I really understand how somebody might want to just go and just sit there and know that's okay. And in essence, whether one of you or your team is present with them or not, I really understand that they may have a sense of being really held there, even if they're not in the presence of another person. And again, all of these things that I think our profession offers in whatever context, whether that's a practitioner in private practice or whether that's working for an organisation like West Wellbeing, there are all these little things perhaps that we do that we may not even realise are contributing to what this person needs. And yet, it like you say, it can be so powerful, can't it? It really can. I just want to ask as well about that, because you talked about how that person in particular wasn't easy to reach necessarily initially. Is that something, and forgive me if this is perhaps inappropriate to ask, I don't know. I know you'll be frank and tell me, but do you think because of where you are, because of the history of conflict in your community and perhaps trust being difficult and safety being something that people haven't always known in many different contexts, do you think that makes it harder for people there to reach out and to ask for help? We know there are certain whether that's men or certain demographics that may find that difficult anyway, or reasons why people might find that difficult. But do you have any sense that might be more so in the community where you are?
Absolutely. And funny, as you were starting to talk about it, actually the word trust was kind of circling around in my mind, and the way that, so whenever we are working with the person, like I'd mentioned earlier, we're kind of linking in with statutory services, and what always kind of comes to the fore of, like, so just say, for example, if there's one client with kind of like a multidisciplinary team around them, we can be there. And often what really I'm going to say surprises me sometimes, but then also it doesn't really. It's kind of like that kind of two things can kind of coexist at the same time. But what we find is that we potentially are the ones that the client has built the trust with. There maybe is a bit of mistrust in terms of the services, the statutory services, because they've been let down, or someone has said they would do something and they haven't. They're on a really long waiting list. So what we find is that whenever we are going to those meetings now, we are the organisation, or we are the people that the clients have placed their most valuable trust into. So that's why we take the kind of advocacy role within the service that we offer very, very seriously, because sometimes it's about going in and the word cheerleader is kind of coming to mind, but it's not the right word. But we will fiercely advocate for people in terms of getting them the help and the support that they need. We have built a relationship up with them. We have built that trust up with them. They trust us. So it's something that we take very, very seriously, and that we will go out and do everything within our power to make sure that their needs are communicated effectively. And we realize as well, we can't do this all on our own. We love to collaborate with other groups, collaborate with other different agencies. And we're really starting to see that kind of coming about now, which is great. We've recently teamed up with a few different organisations, and it's just been incredible. Sometimes me and Roisin turn up to things and it's just like, wow. Just wow. People, again, just amaze us all the time. We've recently just finished an 8-week programme with the guests from the Belfast Homeless Services. And honestly, Faye, I cannot tell you how incredible that piece of work was. We finished last week with it, and we had one of the funders in who was actually so moved by what they were seeing and hearing that they've agreed to fund it for a little bit longer, which is incredible. But these people, these guests, were just so open. So now I suppose I'm going to bring you back to the start of it. Whenever we were first getting to know them, there was some within the group that were quite quiet. One of them had mentioned, the fact of being homeless and being invisible. And that really touched somewhere deep within me, that I just couldn't fathom, this idea that someone would feel so invisible to the whole of society. And then, and we really worked around that, and listening to their stories, and we share, parts of ourselves as well. And then by week 3, there was one of the young people in the group, and he found his voice, and we heard him, and he hasn't stopped talking. Oh. He has just grown so much, and things are really, really changing in his life right now, and it's just incredible to see. And it's like, it's a win for him, but it's a win for us all, because we're all like so cheering him on, and we just want to see the best happen for this person. And yeah, it just makes the job, which sometimes can be really tricky. It can be really hard, but when we see these kind of things happening, it makes it all so worthwhile, because we do hear some very, very traumatic and really hard stories. So this is why, and we're also a group that kind of practices what we preach, in terms of, and we kind of really embed that in with our students as well. There's no point in us kind of starting to recommend, self-care. Don't let it just be that buzz term. We have to practice what we preach, And I'm always, anytime we are out delivering training or anything, it's kind of having that awareness that, other people are looking to you. You might not be aware of it, but we're always being a role model for others, and when people see you, practicing some kind of self-care or doing something to kind of replenish, because, we have to, it's vital within this profession. But people are always watching, and that kind of gives them that kind of ability to then go and do something, to help themselves. I always call out mistakes. I'm like, own your mistakes. Mistakes are brilliant. Mistakes are great. This is how we learn. But don't ever feel afraid or shy away from those mistakes, because sometimes when we make a mistake, it's an opportunity to learn, to change something, to do something differently. Don't kind of start to internalize, criticism or look at yourself in a negative way. I'm one for always owning your mistakes, without that kind of real kind of critical kind of voice, adding to it.
And that self-care, I think, as well, comes in terms of what we model with boundaries as well, doesn't it? I think boundaries are one of the greatest forms of self-care that that you can exhibit, and whether that's for ourselves as practitioners or those people we work with looking at us and hearing us saying no, or not now, or I can't do that, is really, really important, isn't it? And they then are able perhaps to take some of that on, because it can be one of the most difficult things, can't it, to say no? So for many people.
It is, boundaries are absolutely vital. And actually, whenever we were starting, because the training and education side has kind of really grown since Roshan and I took over the roles, because partly that's what our background has always been. Whilst we are practicing, as counsellors, Roshan's a CBT therapist, but the other side of the work we do, is facilitation, it's training, it's education. And funny, across all age groups, actually, boundaries has been the foundation of where we've started, and actually one of the groups that we were working with recently, we seen them kind of, taking the knowledge that they learned around boundaries, and he was putting it in place in real time, when we were observing that. And it was just so lovely to see,
Brilliant.
And helping them realise that, what, boundaries doesn't need to be like this really negative conversation. It can be something really, you're just asserting yourself. It's not a bad thing,
Absolutely.
And this person was quite firm with their boundaries, because this person was really trying to step over them, and it was just amazing to see, and everybody in the group learned from it. So that was really lovely. And yeah, it's something that we teach across, like I say, across all of the ages, and everybody in each of the age groups has taken something away in terms of, the importance of setting boundaries.
I suppose throughout the course of our slightly rambling conversation, you've alluded to different aspects of the work you do. So you've mentioned befriending advocacy, you've mentioned training, you've mentioned addiction. So I just want to sort of hone in on that a little bit and just ask you, so obviously you are speaking to me as a counsellor, and we know there's counselling provision that you provide at West Wellbeing. But I also know, one thing you haven't mentioned today is domestic abuse, that's become part of your work recently. So is it possible, because there are so many things you do, to sort of, again, help people understand? And again, for me, it always makes me think of the community around you and outreach within the community. But yeah, some of these different, so it's a very long rambling question actually, isn't it? Just, yeah, what other services you provide, or any particular groups of people that you are starting to work with more, perhaps?
Yeah, so recently, actually, I'm going to go to the domestic violence one, just to kind of, whilst it's kind of fresh in my mind. But basically, I think about a month and a half ago, West Wellbeing, myself, Roisin, and a couple of our counsellors done training with a local organisation called ONUS. And that basically means that whenever we did that training, it was all around registering West Wellbeing as now a safe place, so that anyone who was experiencing any kind of domestic abuse could come into us. We have a wee logo that we have on our door, and it just means that we are okay to have this conversation, and we will then signpost to the right support and help. We are very, very lucky here that we have a very, very good working relationship with Women's Aid, which is incredible, and we have supported some of their clients, and vice versa. It's just been a really, really good partnership, and we really, really look forward to additional work and more work and going forward. Now, the other thing that's happened off the back of that is that, statistics here in Northern Ireland at the minute are, we are the most dangerous place for women and girls in the whole of Europe at the minute, which is very, very scary.
Yeah.
So basically, we have applied for funding, which fingers crossed we get, And it's based around the violence against women and girls, and it's to really kind of start opening up that conversation and really educating what that looks like, because it kind of, now I'm not great with social media anymore, because social media can be that cesspit of, negativity sometimes, but there also is that really good side of it as well. But I think, as I've seen conversations being had, it means that actually the education around it is really vital, because we need to kind of educating people around what it actually is. And it's not like a thing to say that men don't experience this. It's not at all. What we want to try and do is, and I've actually been having conversations with men just over the last week, and looking at, like masculinity, what does that look like, and healthy masculinity, what toxic masculinity looks like, having those conversations. And then what are the barriers to, if you see a girl or a lady being, harassed in any way, what is the barrier to you like stepping in and doing something? We're talking about that bystander effect, and what is the barriers, because I think that's the conversation that needs to happen. What are the barriers to that happening? And some of the guys that I've spoken to this week, it's like, and giving me real life examples. Well, anytime that I've tried to like step in before, it's meant that I've been hit or I've been assaulted, so I think really educating people around that and looking at the different ways that they can become allies of women and girls, as opposed to, this is a them and us type thing, because that's not what the whole thing is about at all. So that's one part of what we do hope to be bringing out in the coming months. We will be teaming up with other local organisations, like Glow NI is one that we are really looking forward to working with, along with Women's Aid and different organisations like that. We do offer addiction support here. And we do run a group on a Friday, which is very well attended, and it's, the people are consistently showing up for that. They're really getting the benefit from that. Also, again, I'm going to chat to you a wee bit about our befriending advocacy and outreach, because that's really taken off at the minute, because living in West Belfast, and I don't think I did mention that earlier, well, I did, it's an area of deprivation, but what we're finding is that people are living below the poverty line, so our outreach now can look like teaming up with the local food stock in order to get people food, just the basic items, We've had people ring up, and there's been so much kind of shame attached to it, like, I literally don't have anything to put on my table for my kids tonight, and when you hear that and just how hard things are for people, so that's another strand of our service that's really grown. And we team up with Food Stock, who have been absolutely incredible and helping us get those kind of food parcels to those that need it most. It's a very another kind of thing that we've really seen coming through our doors is like what we call the working poor, and it's a really stigmatizing language, I know that, but people who are literally out working and they cannot afford to live, and then supporting them in whatever way we can. And sometimes there's a lot of barriers to getting access to help and support, and that can at times be very frustrating, but we play our part and we do the best that we can within that. So the advocacy outreach is very much prominent in a lot of what we're doing right now. And we like to think of it like a client journey. So whenever the client comes through the door, we do a really thorough assessment and see exactly what it is they need. Sometimes they don't need counselling straight away, so sometimes they need support, so we may put them in through the befriending service with a view to go into counselling when they're ready. The other thing is, sometimes when they go through that counselling journey, and they, they're ready to finish counselling but maybe not ready to have the support completely finished, we'll phase them out then through the befriending service, because I suppose one thing that we don't want is just for people to feel like that's it, you're done and away you go. And sometimes, that's been really, really helpful. We can put people, like we've put people into groups there. There's what's called the Empower Project, and we have a group of people going to do photography. We have a group of people going to do DJing. So it's just something, it gives them something worthwhile to do. And we've teamed up with Disability Action for that, and that's been incredible as well for people. It's given them something that they can really kind of get their teeth into and enjoy.
It struck me listening to you describing all of that again, and I apologise to anybody listening that I keep coming back to this word community and how it's always felt really central to the work you guys do, but I think I understand that even more now, and I think we know now more than ever, and thankfully I think it's being talked about more, about the root causes of poor mental health, and understanding that things like poverty, or perhaps cultural background, stigmatization, all these different things that feed into those early experiences of somebody and how that then impacts them as they move through life. And I think what you do at West Wellbeing is address so many parts of that it isn't just counselling. It's recognising counselling isn't always right for this particular person or their problem, or just not right now. And so what else do they need? And you've put that in place, whether that's befriending or advocacy. You recognise the poverty and deprivation in the community where you live. So you team up with people like Food Stock.
I think that's what we do well, and we form really strong relationships, and reparative relationships, which again is really important, because we realize that we're only like a small part of someone's journey,
Yeah.
And when they come to us and have things like really healthy endings, it can be really reparative for them in their future relationships and and things like that there. So I think, sometimes, you do hear like things kind of banded around, in phrases and actually, do you know what? We kind of do what's that phrase? I can't even remember the phrase now. We say what we do on the tin. Is it that? Yeah. Couldn't get that out there, but it's just something that we find really, really important, and it is, and we use that language actually. I know that so Roisin and I are actually care team managers here, so there's certain people that we work with, that we recognize. And funny, somebody said this to me recently. You're like the real nurturing person. And there's one client in particular that I know that I offer a hug to, because I know that they're not getting one from anywhere else, and that for them just means so much. It means so much for me too. Like I'll be honest, but it's things like that it's just kind of, and it is outside the perimeters, and thank goodness, I'm not in that counselling role with some people, because I can offer that part of myself to them, and it's really, really powerful, safe, gentle touch can be really transformative for some people, and you read the room, when it's appropriate and when it's not. But for this particular client, it's been really it's something that they've just needed,
You guys really live and breathe it, don't you? You're very dynamic, you're very proactive, and the other thing that's really struck me through our conversation is really recognizing, I want to say boundaries again, but I don't think it's even boundaries that I'm talking about. Just knowing that, in a way, the limitations of each of those different services you offer, the limitations of counselling, the limitations of befriending or advocacy, and recognising that actually sometimes other services or other people need to be brought in. And so it's not that. I never get that sense from you that we're the be all and end all, and we're here to fix, and we're here to rescue, we're here to, all those things that we know as counsellors aren't necessarily healthy, but do exist. But instead of just saying that doesn't fit within our service, you then find ways of either providing something that fits or signposting on as necessary.
Well, it's really, really needed. We don't have that kind of thing that we can do everything here, because we really recognise that we can't. For building like strong relationships with other organisations within the community. I mean, at the end of the day, this benefits the clients, no matter what organisation it comes from, and I always kind of think about, when, the client can see that there's other people coming together to support them, like there was somebody I was talking to recently, and they were just like, I just feel like I don't matter. But when you see, or when they seen that actually our organisation stepped up, Food Stock stepped up, Women's Aid stepped up, then it's kind of like, actually, I can see that, I really do matter, people really do care. And that's really, really vital. And I think, we're all about relationship. We love having relationships here. We want to build on that. We want to make sure that our relationships are strong. We're not even afraid to ring up and say, look, do you know what? I'm feeling a wee bit stuck here. Can we talk it out, and that's been really, really helpful for us, and hopefully other organisations, it works the opposite for them too. But we definitely recognise that we can't do it all, and we certainly will not, make any kind of promises to clients that we can't fulfil or that we can't meet, because we know that can be really, really detrimental to their mental health the very second that somebody feels let down. And I'm going to quote, like I always hear Roisin saying as well, when we're having, conversations, when the client just first comes in, and as that kind of conversation progresses, we always use the language of, we want to manage your expectations here, because I think that's very, 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 very important. One of the other things is we absolutely love what we do. We love it. And you've heard a wee bit about my kind of past there, in terms of like I worked in construction, I done many years in a purchase ledger role. I was baking cakes, and it was the most stressful thing ever, because it was bringing out this real perfectionism in me, and I couldn't cope with it. But now I can honestly, hand on my heart, say that I am in a role that I absolutely love. I love what I do. I know that our team very much is like that. I know Roisin is very much in the same boat as me, and we just complement each other so well. We never, the other doesn't have to do anything on their own. We're a team, and it really, really kind of, we're a bit of a tripod, because there's Jared in there too. Jared kind of, steers the ship and kind of holds it all together. He uses humour. Sometimes we're like, wee bit of a coping mechanism there, but he's been brilliant. And really is Roisin and I's go-to whenever we need him. He's doing incredible work as well. And I know you'd mentioned there about the walk that we're going to be doing out of the darkness. So it's going to be in April. Jared and his team have been working really, really hard behind the scenes to get that kind of up and running. So basically the money that is raised from that walk, I think the walk is the 6th or 7th of April. It's the Sunday, whatever the Sunday is. But that walk will take place in the early hours of the morning. So the whole idea, the premise behind it, is that you're walking out of the darkness into daylight, and that's a very, very powerful thing. People really feel that. And again, our community here in West Belfast, there's been a lot of people bereaved by suicide. There's recent statistics out there that say there's, for every suicide, 135 people are directly impacted by that. And And we hear it all here, and the walk, the kind of idea behind the walk is not only to raise funds for both our charities, but also to give people a space to come and really remember their loved one, because, as we go out and do our suicide prevention training and intervention training, we always talk about, now statistics are important, but statistics are people. These are people's family members, and we really we talk about them in a way, that recognizing, that their life really did matter, and for families to come and share their memories and the legacy that person has left behind. It's again another really, really powerful thing. It really brings people together, and people really do come as one, and share their experience, remember their loved one, and it gives them a real purpose. They know why they're doing what they're doing.
I think loss through suicide can be so isolating. There's so much stigma, there's so much shame still around it. It's very isolating, and for people to be able to come together and see, that classic, it's not just me, it's not just us. Look at all these other people that have lost, horribly. You almost wish sometimes you would be the only person, because you wouldn't want that for anybody else. But to see that you're not alone is so powerful. And I was just coming back. We couldn't finish the conversation without mentioning Gerard. I mean, he is a unique individual in his own right, and I don't think I will ever quite forget the first time I met him. And he just works so solidly. I want to say behind the scenes. It isn't behind the scenes, but I suppose I see that in terms of, because it's not in that clinical role so much and the support role. But he literally, as you says, not only steers the ship, but he keeps that ship afloat, doesn't he, for you all? And doing the work I do with our different organisational members, charities and services, we know all too well that funding is so hard and so takes up so much time and so much effort, and yet obviously is so important for the resilience of the service, the future of the service. And I know Gerard is there constantly ensuring that you guys are secure as can be, and therefore the people that you support feel secure in that support with you. And that this walk that you're doing is with food stock. It's acknowledging, poverty, and it's acknowledging the difficulty some people also have putting food on the table. And you're combining together and doing this powerful event that hopefully, like you say, not only will bring some funds in, but will create awareness of the work you do and the issues you work with. And again, what we can do is put in the show notes, put some links there so that anybody, obviously particularly perhaps that's local to you or in Northern Ireland, can log on and either perhaps support or donate or come along if that's appropriate for them to do. So
absolutely. I mean, everybody is welcome. And, we as a charity, we are not government funded. So, Gerard does work really, really hard to kind of to bring, whatever we need in to kind of keep the building going. The other thing about the walk is that all of the money raised will stay in West Belfast. Which again is something that's really, really powerful as well. It will be used directly to help those in need in the area. And I want to give a wee shout out to yourself and NCPS, whenever you had the conference, would you believe that's a year ago?
I know.
My goodness. But, being able to kind of come and be alongside colleagues from, not only just the local area, but across Northern Ireland, it really strengthens, those relationships as well. But, Siobhan O'Neill, who is our mental health champion, was in attendance, and it gave an opportunity for me to then, speak about West Wellbeing and our services, and through, NCPS, Siobhan came out and and had a meeting with us, wanted to hear more about the service that we offer, and was really, really brilliant and very, I think she left knowing a lot more about the service, but was very impressed on what we do here. And that was absolutely fantastic. And that wouldn't have come about had we not been NCPS organisational members. So we are so, so grateful to you guys. Always there to support us in whatever way we need, and I think that is something that we always tell people about. It's really lovely to have the support. Thank you for the opportunity to kind of talk about West Wellbeing and what we're doing.
No, you deserve to be shouted about, you really do.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you to Eilish for joining me today, and thank you for listening in. If you would like to know more about the work of West Wellbeing, or if you're interested in the Out of the Darkness, A Walk of Hope event, which is happening in the early hours of Sunday the 6th of April, then the links you'll need are all provided in the show notes below. This podcast is brought to you by the National Counselling and Psychotherapy Society, a professional home for counsellors, psychotherapists, and over 120 wellbeing organisations across the UK. Autonomy, diversity, creativity and community are at the heart of what we do. We're creating a positive space for conversations with people who share common beliefs and goals, because together our voice is louder. If you would like to know more about the NCPS, please visit www.ncps.com for more information. And please remember to follow and subscribe to this podcast so you're always part of the conversation.